Hello everybody, welcome to Orabox. I am Ora, and in today's video we will be going over a 17 Mists of Tirna Scithe. Now, this dungeon was done specifically with me in my single target priority focused gear and build set. I will put a link in that description below and possibly a card above. Hopefully you guys can go check that out once you kind of see it in action properly. The reason I'm sharing this particular video, although it was out of time, is because I opened up some people's eyes in my group to just what Ret Paladins can be capable of. So without any further delay, let's get into the video. And I will try not to do too much talking, as that's some feedback that I got from you last time, but I will discuss the important bits as we see them. So, before we start, just a quick show of my score as of current. Nearly 2100. I've had Keystone Master for a while now, already in this season, and my conduit setup, as you'd see, is Pelagos, with my 3 potency conduits being Ring and Clarity, Virtuous Command, and Templar's Vindication. The Condensed Animosphere Endurance conduit for this particular dungeon, although you won't see it at the end, healed for about 86,000 damage over the course of the entire dungeon, which I believe was about 9% of my total damage taken through it, with a lot of the healing obviously be one of the anima powers. So I'll press play and we'll get this show on the road. This bit is just a slight discussion for what we were doing, how we were pulling. Ready check goes out. Stitch was swapping from Blackhawk Statue to Ring of Peace for the skip, because our hunter wasn't quite sure what we were asking of him. So not a whole hell of a lot happens here. So we'll skip ahead to the actual key going in. You can see I'm just resetting counters, making sure everything's set on details, and we go. I will say that this first pull was very sloppy, wasn't particularly well communicated, but there is something of note that I think you guys should see. It happens just before I die. Now, I did pre-bubble going into this pack because Brewmaster's threat is AoE capped with Keg Smash. Unfortunately, they don't gain any benefits from multiple targets like we do say for Consecration. So threat is a problem. However, the bit of note comes into it here. Stitch is at 44 stacks from Necrotic. He calls for a bop because he has that Cancel Aura macro that we discussed in the Necrotic Wake. So I bop him. I bop him instantly. Well, as quickly as I can. I should have been a little bit faster and probably had my mouse already over his nameplate, perhaps. Expecting the call. Because at about 40 stacks, he needs help. He needs help at 30 stacks. But if he can't kite and it gets up that high, then we have a problem. So yeah, the rest of this pack is just cleaning up. We've had 3 deaths to it, but it could have been a lot worse. We could have had a full wipe to this. So credit to Stitch and Zidge for holding out as they did. Yes, Zidge did go down in the end, but still, it wasn't a full wipe, so we'll take it. Now, I'm sure a lot of you people are familiar with this skip. So, Stitch is going to paralyze that Drust Harvester and ring it away out of aggro range, so we don't socially aggro it. Now, for hunters, what you can do is you can ice trap it, and you can then run past and feign death once everybody else is past, because you will have combat aggro with it. Priests can also Mind Soothe it. You can Warlock Gateway past it, you can do a bunch of other things. But anyway, for this particular party, or pack rather, That blue marker was my priority target. I burned it to hell. My job was to nuke it because we can't coordinate the kicks very well. We essentially have 3 active kickers. Our hunter has yet to use his kick in the entire dungeon, and you can see there that I get slapped by a spiteful because I'm trying to finish a mob off. That was greedy of me, I shouldn't have done it. Now, minutes are coming back off cooldown. The Execution of Vareth has been pulled, and I don't have Bob to help with Carnage. I do, however, have Sacrifice and Shield of Vengeance if I need to assist in reducing the damage taken by a party member. However, we're quite fortunate in that I have decided to basically blow this guy up once my cooldowns are back, and I do. And the hunter pre-turtled, so he didn't get the debuff. Now, because as a Retribution Paladin our priority damage is so high, we're not going to get a second charge. Mob just dies. Stitch did finish it off with a touch of death, but still. Now, the anima powers. I kind of want to go over this slightly, because it's something that I haven't discussed in previous guides. Pause. No. A little bit slow on the uptake there. I keep forgetting that I can't just click on the screen to pause it. So, we click the anima orb, and here's our selection. Dagger of Necrotic Wounding, Volcanic Plumage, and Champion's Brand for Execution of Vareth. Now, as a Retribution Paladin, Dagger of Necrotic Wounding isn't great. We don't really attack fast enough to get its stacks up quickly enough for it to do a lot of damage. There are some situations where you will have to just bite the bullet and take it. I've done so in Halls of Atonement and in a few other dungeons, purely because of the physical damage, the healing and absorption reductions. So it's like having a mortal wound on the target. If you have a class that can apply a mortal wound effect, monks, arms warriors, things of that nature, great. You don't necessarily need to worry about it. So enough of that. For Retribution Paladins, Champion's Brand or Volcanic Plumage. 9 times out of 10, I'd actually recommend going for Champion's Brand because it helps with our burst. If you can remain above 70% health, your mastery is going to go through the roof. Or your crit if you're really, really crit heavy, but I imagine that due to the way our stats are scale baseline, it will be mastery for us 100% of the time, which is fantastic. Volcanic Plumage, I'd recommend probably on Fortified Weeks or in dungeons where it is very caster heavy, because being able to throw targets up into the air on a chance will help interrupt a lot of casts. So if you're in a group that is struggling for kicks, say you've got a Demonology Warlock, a Shadow Priest, yourself, the tank, and a healer that doesn't have a kick, so another Paladin, a Priest maybe, or a Druid, then yes, maybe take Volcanic Plumage because you will help the group. And end of the day, as a Retribution Paladin, that's what we need to do. We need to make ourselves the guy that can. You can see that I'm just checking my mastery there. I've gone up to 49% mastery. So I've gained about 4% flat mastery from picking Champion's Brand. You can see there that I'm checking the damage profile. So it's increased the total damage I do with my holy damage to 48%. And you'll see why I've checked it. Or why I check it, because I'll do so again shortly. There we go. So, a little bit of miscommunication here. The Hunter's gone to get the Incinerator using the pack pull through the wall, and Stitch has gone for Sogadon the Breaker, because we were given different amounts of information about whether or not Blizzard had quickly hotfixed the ability to pull through that wall using pets. We were under the initial assumption that they had. Turns out that they haven't they hadn't as of yesterday, and as of the 26th of the 7th, 2021, I've not seen anything as of yet to say that they have hotfixed it. But we assume that they will soon, because the ability to have 3 anima powers before pulling the first boss somewhat trivializes Ingra Malak and makes him somewhat easier. You'll also see very shortly just what that means for Retribution Paladins. But anyway. Sogadon pretty much goes down without any problems. Kind of took a little while because obviously the Hunter was in fact dead. You can see I didn't get the debuff there rooting me in place. Now, current standing theory is it can be either dodged, blocked, or parried. So if you're naturally lucky, you can just not get rooted in place, and you can completely and utterly avoid that debuff and just get back out. It's happened a few times to me, my paladin friend that heals quite often, and occasionally Stitch has had that as well, where you can just flat mitigate and ignore it. We've yet to work out how exactly. So anyway, the Incinerator's pulled. Stitch and I are discussing at this point who takes kicks. Stitch takes the first, I take the second. We ignore the pugs, essentially, for this, because we want to make sure that Inferno never goes through. So, you can see that Shaman's opened up, done okay, that's cute. We now hit our single target DPS, because we've generated the holy power required. And there we are. We're now pushing 9k, and we've held onto wings. Now, we've held onto wings for a very big reason. Yes, we could have used it, but it wouldn't be up when we need it on Ingra. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put the fear of the light into the boss. And by proxy, we're also going to show the rest of the group just what paladins can achieve. Now, I can already hear you going, yeah, Ret Paladins don't do that much. I will show you the evidence shortly. So you can see there that I take Champion's Brand again, and my mastery is now 50. I'm now doing 58% more holy damage. I've just gained 10% holy damage picking up the second Champion's Brand. As long as I stay above 70% health, that is. Now, I will push us forward 30 seconds, because there's not basically this particular part with Droman still being our enemy, you don't really use your cooldowns. Actually, no, we're not quite 30 seconds away, I think, so I will just move it slightly ahead. And Droman's about to shift, so we'll play it from here. Droman's now our ally, and we pop as the Paladin. Now, before this change, I was at 3.4k DPS. I'm now at nearly 15k DPS. And Ingra Malak is below 50% health. We've also done nearly 200,000 more damage than the Shaman. And nearly 300 more K DPS. No, 600k more DPS rather, or damage, than the Hunter. So, yeah, we'll just go back again and we'll rewatch that. So we'll go back to just before we blow everything up. And we'll just rewatch that. So, yeah, I'm at 3.4k DPS, 3.5. I've done 228k total damage at the moment. And now we go into it. 570, 670, 770, and I've overtaken everybody. And we're still going. To 1.2 million. So in that first phase, essentially that first damage phase, as a Retribution Paladin, I did 1 million damage to the boss. And this is using that single target priority build I discussed. And so we just continue going through, in case of survive, and get to the second damage phase with all our cooldowns. Now, Wings isn't going to be back up to start, but we don't need to worry about that. This is just a case of survive. You'll see I take a little bit too much damage and actually have to pre-bubble, but it's fine. You'll see that I end up using health pots and things like that to make sure that I'm above 70% health when we go into this burst. So there's the bubble. And the Shaman is starting to catch me on DPS and total damage done. So's the Hunter. We're now at 1.4, 1.3, and 1.2. But here's the damage phase. I don't have Wings for another 22 seconds. 1.49 million damage to the boss going into it. And we're now breaking the 2 million mark. Wings is up in 7. We've gotten to the point now where it's just murder Ingra. And you can see there I'm 600,000 damage again ahead of the Shaman. $600,000 damage. And nearly 700,000 damage higher than the Hunter. All because I held my cooldowns and we played to the Paladin strengths. Now, at this point, Stitch was surprised. And I think the Pugs were too. Because you don't often see this kind of damage from Retribution. But I wanted to show you guys that it is, in fact, possible. And as long as you're willing to niche yourself and make yourself the guy that can within a group, we will get those invites and you will get your Keystone Master. So we'll let the maze play out. A few sloppy pulls here and there, but generally speaking, it's pretty easy and pretty chill. Cheers, folks. So yeah, you can see at this point, especially for a large single target mob, my cooldowns have come back. The mob's at 50% health. Yes, I could burst them. However, Stitch and I are discussing whether or not I just hold them. And knowing that the next pack that we go into is going to be an AoE pack, we decide it's best for me to hold and just use with wings. Unfortunately, that shaper kick was missed. I was kind of focusing on the tender and trying to get that down because I didn't want things to heal. Unfortunately, our hunter goes down pretty rapidly. I'm still not entirely sure what murdered him. Might have been a debuff of some description that our healer didn't dispel, or could have just been because he was standing and stuff. I don't know. But it's fine. We get this pack through, and then I start playing chicken with my Spiteful. What I should have done is just cavaliered around it and just held my Cavalier. This is one of the reasons why having the Cavalier talent, so you've got 2 Divine Steeds, is somewhat worth it. However, I prefer Unbreakable Spirit. I prefer having Bubble on a much shorter cooldown. I also prefer having Lay on Hands essentially be a 3-minute cooldown when used appropriately, paired with the Healing Hands talent. Now, you can see this is just do as much damage as I can while occasionally being yeeted backwards. Pretty much just popping my single target damage onto the Shaper, because it was marked blue, and Stitch deemed it needing to die. Generally, blue isn't my marker, but when my friend Arc Thunder isn't around, then I will just murder whatever Stitch marks for me. Bit like marking Skull in the old days. But anyway, so we go into it, and we're going up to the boss. Now, at this point, I have 30 seconds until all my cooldowns are back. So we're going to adopt a tactic that kind of helps the group out and reduces the healing taken, but can also do you dirty, basically. But we'll go into it. So this boss will summon 4 images of themselves as mirror images. Shami just got slapped, had to Ank, stood in the beams. Because the thing is, although they look like projectiles, they actually act like beams. So the moment it comes out, you will get damaged across the entire length of it. It doesn't matter where you are in its line. If you think you've got time to move out of it, you ain't. Just get out of it before it even gets summoned. The Vulpin gets cast, I snare it then gets hexed. So we're just CCing it. We're trying to avoid this stuff. And you can see that I'm still holding my cooldowns. I'm holding my cooldowns for the mirror images, because we're going to blow it up. So I'm doing 2.7k DPS at this point before we go into the first guessing game. We then work out which target it is, with Stitch making the call. I then swap to it. We then just pop everything. Now, unfortunately, I break the damn thing out of its CC due to a Divine Toll, but it doesn't matter. The thing goes down. My DPS has now doubled. I've gone from 2.7 to 5.5k DPS, and we're still going. Now, I will say, and I don't know if I go over this in the video, I can't really remember, but I did almost as much damage as all 3 members of my group, the Hunter, the Shaman, and Stitch, to those images, with each of them doing about 140k and me doing nearly 360k damage to them. I was deleting them. You can see the minutes are about to come back up, and we're going to go into another game. So I just hold. 7 seconds. 4 seconds. It's the easy one, and then we just dodge. We Seraphim. The Hunter goes down. Needs a combat res, and I'm just going into single target DPS. It don't matter. The clone's dead. Me and Stitch did it on our own. It's fine. I bubble soak and then get out of dodge, just to make things easier for people. So you can see that I'm on par now with this hunter, and my damage profile is different. I'm not smacking Mistcaller as much, but I'm getting rid of the intermission phases. Now, you could do this the inverse. You could damage Mistcaller and not do the mirror images, and that then puts more stress on your healer as that phase goes on longer. Generally, I find it much easier to get those phases over and done with, and just let the rest of the group pump Mistcaller. Because I'm still doing respectable damage, I'm just doing more when it matters. Your healers will love you for it, trust me. Now, a big thing about this particular mechanic is you're picking the odd one out. Thankfully, Stitch is pretty on the ball with it, because it takes me a few seconds to work it out, because I have to look at everyone in specifically and then kind of go, huh? But it's fine. So, for those that don't know, there can be 3 variations. It can either have a ring or not have a ring. It could be shaded or empty. Or it could be leaf or flower. And it's always going to be the odd one out. Now, I'm just highlighting over the DPS to check how much damage was done to the illusionary clones, and just laughing over the amount of damage I did. Because I wasn't expecting it to be that much. Stitch did 130,000, the Shaman did 144,000, and I did, yeah, about 360,000. 1 minute's come up in 6 seconds, so you already know what I'm about to do. We generate the Holy Power, we've got Seraphim up, and we just got a turn on him. It's like, ah, yes, good sir, allow me to introduce you to our Lord and Saviour. Have you heard of execution sentence? No? Well, let me introduce you. And the final one here that you tend to take can either be Regenerative Fungus or Handbook of Uncivil Etiquette. Now, Uncivil Etiquette, when you kick something and actually interrupt a cast, so kick, rebuke, mind freeze, any kick that you have to interrupt spellcasting, if you do it, you increase the damage that that target takes from you by 10%. But you have to stop a cast. The Regenerative Fungus is just every time you take damage, you heal for a little bit of your health. Depending on where you are in the dungeon, it can be more beneficial than others. Like, for instance, at this point, having Uncivil Etiquette isn't necessarily helpful. However, it does if you're coming into things. Like, you see that I mark that target star. That first kick on star is mine. I have called it, and I have called it because I'm going to burst it. So you will see that I will pop wings and I will just go to town. I've pre-bubbled, I kick it, it's now taking 10% more damage from me. That 10% damage is now feeding into execution sentence. Now, I've just done 9k DPS, 9.5k DPS, and most of that damage was pure single target. I have then taken, and because it was mostly pure single target, I have ripped aggro from Stitch on that Spinehorn. And Stitch had to clamor very quickly to get that threat back. And this goes back to what we were discussing previously and have mentioned in previous guides, that Retribution Paladin's threat is difficult. We can hit something so hard that we can, and I have done, rip aggro from tanks the moment they've taunted. It's like, I've just taunted that, well, taunt it again, please. I need the bubble. Because a lot of our abilities, although AoE, Divine Taunt being a perfect example of this, although it can be an AoE ability and hit 5 targets, every single one of those 5 5 targets that it hits is classed as a single target hit, therefore generating more threat than, say, a Rain of Fire or Flame Strike. Now, our healer got beeped off, so I then try to do the hybrid thing of keep Stitch alive. Now, what I should have done here is I should have dispelled myself, but what I did was I bopped Stitch instead to make sure that he was alive long enough to get Zidge down there. Now, I didn't have Lay on Hands, I didn't have Bubble, I didn't have Shield of Vengeance, so it was a case of either I dispel myself or I bop the tank. And in that particular case, I bopped the tank. But at the same time, Zidge, our Druid healer, should not have been booped off. But there was a lot going on, so and these things happen, unfortunately. But anyway. Zidge is doing a fantastic job of keeping everyone up, though. Now he's back. And has done throughout the entire dungeon. So, all credit to him. It ain't easy being a Resto Druid. So you can see me just kiting my Spiteful off. We're going. Now, I believe Stitch goes for a double pull. He does. Now, this is where one of the few situations where if you were in an AoE build, it'd be beneficial. Because with it being a Necrotic week, Stitch has already got up to the point where he is struggling for stacks. He is at 26, 27, 29 stacks now, 30 stacks. He basically can't be healed at this point. And I don't have Bop. So he's had to ring himself and kite. I'm just dancing around, trying to take as little damage as possible, but I have 2 stacks of that Venom spit on me, which hurts. I have gone through my vials, I have gone through my healing pots. At this point, what I should have done, and I don't think I do, is I should have summoned my steward to give me more vials. But I might actually invest in a weak aura for that now I'm thinking about it. That might actually be quite good. And I'll have a look. If I find the weak aura and I like it, I'll then recommend it to you guys in the next video. But anyway, yeah, so we've got 2 minutes 30. We're a little bit behind on percentage due to the maze, but we can just go into this guy and slap him. So that's what we do. We pop everything. I make the kick, 10% more damage from me, and there we are. We hit 21k DPS single target during our bloodlust. 200, nearly 200k damage during the burst window, more than the hunter. And we just hold now. We slap as much DPS as we can. And the good thing about having different DPS like this is the fact that we all have different phases where we do the most damage. Like you can see now that Shaman has caught up and is beating me. The reason for that is because Elemental Shaman's burst, unlike Paladins, is backloaded. So whereas a lot of our burst is front-loaded, so, you know, we only need 12, 13 seconds to do all of our damage for the next minute. Shamans need 15, 16 seconds before they do all of their damage. Which means that Elemental Shamans and Retribution Paladins in comps together, really good, because you cover each other's weaknesses. So you basically transition what is, for one class, maybe 12 seconds of burst into a boss getting slapped stupidly hard for the best part of 30 seconds. And unfortunately, Shami got hit, so needs a combat res. And because I wanted to reduce the amount of damage that Stitch was taking, I was running Devotion Aura. What I could have swapped to, if Stitch had been more comfortable tanking, I could have swapped to Retribution Aura, just on the off chance that these people did die, and it would have given us an extra pair of wings in between our 2-minute cooldowns, which is quite nice. So we get the kick, and we go into another burst. Unfortunately, the kicks didn't quite line up with my burst, but it doesn't matter. We just go into it. We avoid the damage that we can, and we just pump. Now, Tredova doesn't take any increased damage at any point during this fight. So, unlike Ingra Malok at the start, where we were just hitting so bloody hard that we forced our DPS numbers up, this is how it looks on a usual Tyrannical boss, when for the most part we can stand still. Nearly 9k DPS overall for that fight, which is huge. I kicked the wrong target, so I ended up racialing to get rid of the magic shield that these things get, but it's fine. So we're 45 seconds over a minute, and that's just due to deaths and miscommunication on a few parts, a few silly deaths, but all in all, wasn't a bad key. And even with me being single target focused, my overall DPS for the key was 7.7k. Now, that is a pretty high value when you consider that I wasn't running the padding build with Tempest of the Lightbringer, and it was focused primarily on dealing with the problem ads. So, the takeaway. Single target Retribution Paladin build does work, and it works very, very well if you're willing to commit to that niche. Now, I would like to say, before going out, that I have seen some new guides pop up for Retribution Paladins, and by all means, go have a nosy at them. They're written by some really good people. I don't have their permissions to post them. But yeah, go have a look. But one thing I will say is please take some of the things that they say with a grain of salt. Because they are aiming more at just getting you to Keystone Master. So just getting all your 15s in times for both weeks. What I'd like to try and do, if you guys will let me, I would like to try and help you show that Paladins can get into the 20 keys. We can get to the 21s, we can get to the 22s. I want to help you guys eke out as much DPS as you physically can from your respective builds. So please like, comment, subscribe below. Let me know what you want to see and what I can do as a player and as a Retribution Paladin to further aid you. I do have a 16 DOS that is out of time as well that I will review, where we will be a little bit more analytical of my errors, because that particular dungeon could have been done better. And I will also be releasing a video probably tomorrow where we will go over my raid performances and my logs, and we will, as a community, start looking at how to improve, because I'm by no means the best Ret Paladin in the world. I want to be, and I will do my best to get there, and I'd like to bring you guys with me. So, until the next one, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I hope you get some nice loot in your dungeons. Let me know how it goes, guys. Catch you later and have a good one.